Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm back with another video. It's what day is it? Is the 31st of May, 2025, and I just returned from a one-month trip to Russia. I had planned to stay longer, but because of various exigencies, you could say I decided to cut it short. But it's not so important for our purposes. But I wanted to mention that. On the return flight, getting from Thailand to Russia and back is not so easy. It actually from the city where I left Russia in Yalta, I took a bus trip from Yalta to the city of Simferopol, which is about 2 hours, and then I had to wait another. I guess it was another. It turned out to be just an hour actually, because I had planned to take a bus from Simferopol to the city of Sochi, but because of a chance opportunity, you might say, instead of taking a bus, I ended up taking a minivan, and the minivan took like an hour and a half. It would be a 10-hour trip, and just getting through the inspection on the Kerch Bridge, which is, it's been subject to several terrorist attacks, so they have to be careful that the security is okay. But because I was in a minivan instead of in a bus, there were only 3 people to search instead of 40 or something. So I got through that in about 10 minutes. The trip went completely smoothly, and I got to Sochi, which is another city that's kind of it's a famous city for tourism in Russia. And I had actually planned to stay with some people in Sochi, but that plan happened to fall through. So I decided to just come back to Thailand. But anyway, it's about a 2-hour bus ride from Yalta to Sochi to Simferopol, which is the capital of Crimea, and then it was a 10-hour trip to Sochi from Sevastopol, and then there was a several-hour, I think it was about like a 10-hour layover in Sochi before a flight from Sochi to Dubai, and that flight was about 4 hours. And then there was another couple of hours, I guess, until the flight from Dubai back to Bangkok, which is about 8 hours long. And then there was another 2-hour intermission, you could say, between Bangkok and a flight back to Chiang Mai. But the thing that was really interesting was that on the flight from Sochi to Bangkok, it was an overnight flight, and they took pretty good care of us. The food was quite good. They gave us a pretty decent sized meal, which you don't often see on flights. The quality was good, but the thing that was really interesting was that they had a huge entertainment complex, with a video screen, and you could get music, sports, weather, all kinds of stuff. But they had movies, and they have movies in many different genres. And I'm not a great fan of modern movies. I think they're kind of junky, and can't really. I just don't find them very interesting. So I went to look at the what do they call it? It was classic. It was like movie classics, and I tracked down 2 movies. One of them, which was Casablanca, and the other movie, the first one I saw, was For Whom the Bell Tolls. And the reason why I watched that movie because the movie is based on a novel by Ernest Hemingway, and I thought anything by Ernest Hemingway is something that's worth watching. And the second movie was Casablanca with Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. And both movies actually star Ingrid Bergman, who's an absolutely beautiful woman and a great actress. So, but the reason why I watched these 2 films was because And what the impact was for me was that it was talking about a state of mind of the American social and political milieu in which they were made, which was during World War II. So, For Whom the Bell Tolls is about an American guy, a so-called mercenary, who, which is not fair to say that, because he paid with his life. But it's about an American guy who is in Spain during the Spanish counter-revolution. So there was a revolution in Spain in the 1930s, and in 1936 the Republicans took control of the government. But the fascists, led by Franco, with the support of Italy and notably with Nazi Germany, were staging a counter-revolution, which eventually they did win, unfortunately, and Spain fell under the rule of a fascist Franco dictator, for what, at least 30 years. So, the movie has a tragic ending, but basically what he's talking about, it was starring Gary Cooper and, as I say, Ingrid Bergman. And the movie is about this guy who is his job. He's acting as basically a guerrilla fighting against the fascist forces, and his job is to blow up a bridge, which is absolutely critical for defending the republic. And he meets this young woman, Ingrid Bergman, who is part of a guerrilla band, and she's only 19 years old, but she's serving basically as the cook for these people. And it turns out, as the movie progresses, that her father was the emperor of a town that was, it was a Republican town, and the fascists came in, killed her father, killed her mother, raped her, treated her terribly, cut off her hair, basically shaved her head in complete humiliation of this 19-year-old woman. And fortunately, she was able to free herself, and she ended up with this guerrilla band. So she's the cook for them. And the guerrilla band is led by this Spanish guy who had participated in hostilities, anti-fascist hostilities, and but he has become, you could say, too cautious, and according to his partner, a woman, very cowardly. And she finally says, "Look, if you're not going to, participate in fighting these fascists, then you're just not worthy to be the leader." And so she ends up taking over the leadership of this group, and she meets Gary Cooper, and she can obviously see this guy is committed to the cause. And at one point, people ask him, "What are you doing here? You're an American. You have no reason to come to Spain and fight in this war. It's not your war." And Gary Cooper, this is 1943, he says, "Look, Germany is testing their weapons in Spain, and they're preparing for a big war. And if we lose that war, we're going to lose our democracy. So for those people who think that communism is a problem, they should understand that fascism has no regard for communism or democracy, and so we have to make common cause with people, with the Soviet Union, which is what the fascists were fighting in 1943, and also why Franklin Delano Roosevelt sided with the Soviet Union during World War II. So I thought that was really interesting, the fact that here's this movie made in 1943 taking an anti-fascist position. In the end, the cowardly former leader finally does find his courage and helps them to escape after bombing this bridge. They had to get out of there because they knew that the fascist forces would overtake them by airplane and wipe them out. So he was able to lead them out of this kind of forest guerrilla redoubt that they were in, and they were able to escape. But at the last moment, Gary Cooper is on a horse trying to, he has to run with his horse through enemy fire to get to the other side where he'd be safe, and then they could all take off. But he ends up getting seriously injured. His leg is broken. He's not going to be able to move further. He would slow them down and lessen their chances to win, get to friendly forces. But in the meantime, of course, his this woman Ingrid Bergman had fallen in love with him, and he had fallen in love with her. She's a beautiful woman. She clearly, was attracted to his heroism and his dedication, and she tells him the whole story of what her life, what terrible things had happened to her. And it was important for American people to hear, what the Nazis were capable of, and even that was just a smattering of how bad it was for those that the Nazis considered to be, their targets. So at the very end, she is absolutely committed to being with him, and he says to her, "Wherever you go, I will be with you." And he meant, I'm going to be dying here. I'm going to be fighting these people. I have a machine gun. I'm going to hold them off while I'll help you guys escape. So here's this guy who gives up his country, gives up the love of his life in order to, fight fascism. And it's a very heroic movie, and it's apparently based on a true story. So I thought I wanted to bring that movie to your attention. It's not so easy to find on YouTube. Fortunately, it was on the internal movie list of offerings that was on this airplane. Now, the second movie is Casablanca, which is a very, very famous movie of the 1940s. And that movie is about this guy named Humphrey Bogart, which is a very famous actor of the time. And in that movie, what happens is that he's like a casino and bar operator in Casablanca, Morocco, which is under nominal neutral territory. It is not completely controlled by the Nazis who had taken over Vichy France. So in World War II, the Nazis broke through French defenses and took over essentially half the country, which was called Vichy France. And Vichy France were essentially collaborators with the Nazis. But part of France was technically not under their control. And this particular city's Casablanca was in a kind of like a bone of contention where the Nazis didn't have complete control, but they were sort of semi-occupying it. And the military governor of this area is in a very precarious position because he actually sides with France as a country. But because of the pressure of the Vichy government, he has to play a kind of a double game. So Humphrey Bogart, the hero of this story, a guy named Rick, had fallen in love with this beautiful woman, Ingrid Bergman, in France, and he didn't know at the time that she was married, but she had been married to this guy named Victor Laszlo, who was from Bulgaria and was very active in the resistance to the Nazis. What I found interesting was that during World War II, Bulgaria was fighting on the side of the Nazis because the government of Bulgaria was siding with the Nazis, and it wasn't that the population was particularly crazy about that, but the government had made arrangements. And we see a mirror of this situation in the EU now, where there are many countries, in France, Germany, Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, where there's opposition to the EU rule, which is acting essentially as a dictatorship and has very hostile attitudes towards Russia itself. And they're pushing for war with Russia, which would be absolutely suicidal. And the populations of several of these countries, just don't want to go along with it. But just like with Bulgaria during World War II, they were kind of forced to go along with this. And of course, as when the Nazis lost the war, the Bulgarian people then were empowered to take back their country for at least the time being. So here we are in this city of Casablanca, is a disputed area, and this guy Victor Laszlo shows up there, and the Nazis, Victor Laszlo had escaped from a concentration camp, and he ended up in Casablanca, and he's trying to get to Portugal, and then catch a boat from Portugal to the United States where he could continue his resistance work. So that's basically what's happening. But of course, the Nazis want to get him and take him back to Germany, try him, and execute him. So, but this guy Rick, who's the owner of this bar and gambling casino, essentially, is trying to be. He says, I'm neutral in this. I don't give a damn about politics." And people remind him that, well, he was sending guns to Ethiopia because he was supporting the Ethiopian government against the fascist Italians who invaded Ethiopia and took it over as a colony. And this guy Rick was completely opposed to that. And there was one other conflict that he was also, I think he had also fought, like the Gary Cooper character in For Whom the Bell Tolls. He was fighting in Spain, on the side of the Republic. Many of you don't even know what was going on in the 1930s. So it wasn't like World War I started in 1941 when the Japanese, hit Pearl Harbor. No, the fascists in Germany and in Italy were acting in a very warlike manner. They were engaging in war, as I say, in Ethiopia, and they also were supporting the fascist government in Spain. And there was a lot of Americans who were opposed to that, and they were putting their lives on the line fighting for the Republic. So this is all very telling because we're in a kind of a replay of World War II where it's unfortunate to say this, but during World War II, as much as Franklin Delano Roosevelt was siding with the Soviet Union against fascism, there were many American industrialists and oligarchs who were on the side of the German government. Henry Ford had a medal for being a friend of Nazi Germany, and he was supplying them with automobiles and trucks and things of that nature. And the head of Standard Oil, which is now, I think it's now Exxon, was supplying oil to the Nazis. And at one point, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said, you got to stop this. And the head of Standard Oil said to FDR, "We're going to make money wherever we want to, and if you don't like it, we'll shut off oil to you." So, I mean, this is the kind of complex politics that went on inside of the United States during World War II, and have been going on ever since. The question is the United States really a democracy? And a relatively recent study by Princeton said no. The 1%, they basically control everything. The 99%, that is most of us, have very little say in the democratic process. And so the wars go on. Wall Street keeps doing what it's doing. The country slides further into difficulty. And the vision that FDR had for the country was essentially swept aside after his death. So, but the reason why I bring all this up is because during World War II, there was a strong sentiment um, by the people who supported Henry Wallace, who was against the colonialism and imperialism, and it showed up in the support of many Americans who were fighting on the side of the Republicans inside of real democratic process in Spain. And unfortunately, FDR did not take a strong enough position on that, and as a result, the Spanish Republic was defeated, and fascism took control of Spain for the next 30 years. So now, in the end of this movie, again, um, this guy named Rick, who is the casino and bar owner, um, uh, when there he is, and Victor Laszlo shows up with his actual wife Ingrid Bergman, and Humphrey Bogart is absolutely crushed because he didn't know that she was married to this guy, and she didn't know at the time that he had survived a concentration camp and had escaped. So when she got together with Humphrey Bogart in Paris shortly before the Nazis took over, um, they were having a very intense love affair, and she didn't tell him that her husband was had been killed, much less she didn't know that he was alive. So that was the reason why she got together with Humphrey Bogart. But then it turns out that he had escaped. He got back together with her. He needs her. He's totally in love with her, and so Ingrid Bergman has to make a decision. Is she going to go with the guy that she was passionately in love with, this guy Rick, Humphrey Bogart, or is she going to support her husband, Victor Laszlo? And in the end, and Humphrey Bogart is very, jealous of this whole situation. But in the end, um, he realizes that for all of his talk about being neutral, and he doesn't give a damn anymore, and he's just in it for the money, he actually does care, and he realizes that he has to give up the love of his life, Ingrid Bergman, for her husband, who really had a great who depended on her for her support. So you had these two movies, both about war, both about fascism and good people who are willing to put their lives on the line or willing to give up the love of their life because of the larger cause. And what I find so significant about these two movies is that people in the United States generally have really lost their way. They don't understand the priorities here. They don't understand the real issues. The real issues is oligarchic control. It's the international banking system. It's the desire of Western elites to control the world using any means necessary, fomenting wars, and it's the people who are caught in the middle, and unfortunately, most Americans and many Europeans have been so bamboozled that they don't really understand what the issues are. And so these two movies during World War II, really kind of sharpened the the issue so that people at that time really did understand what was at stake. And so the reason why I like those two movies is because it was telling people, what really is at stake. And the reality is that what was at stake during World War II, which was democracy versus fascism, is just as true now as it was true then. And so that's what I want to just bring to your attention. If you have a chance to see either of these movies, they're both extremely inspiring. There's one scene in the movie where these German officers are in the bar, and they start singing some German patriotic song, and Victor Laszlo, who's the head of the resistance, comes down the stairs from his room, and he says to the orchestra, play the Marseillaise, play the French national anthem, and the whole the whole group of people in this bar nightclub type place, they're French, and with a little encouragement, they just really sock it to those Germans, and the Germans are really pissed off, and they demand that this nightclub slash casino slash bar close. But it shows that the people really at that time they understood what was at stake, and so we need to understand what is at stake here as well. It's the same. The problems of the Second World War were never actually resolved, and what is going on now, particularly in Ukraine, is the fact that those problems were not resolved, and what is going on in Ukraine is essentially an attempted replay of World War II, where NATO, which was founded shortly after World War II and incorporated a number of former Nazi officers in their leadership structure, it was created in order to take down Russia. It's always been about taking down Russia because Russia has a lot of resources, and also Russia is just very irritating because it simply doesn't put up with the West's, you know, obsessive desire to control the world, which is done for the last 500 years. And that is what is actually going on here. And so it was refreshing to see these two movies, which, granted, most people would not see these movies with the kind of perspective that I have. But if any of you have these kind of similar sentiments that you do care about democratic process and you don't believe in Western imperialism and all the wars that have ensued to control resources and people and cause tremendous suffering all over the world for the sake of a few very wealthy people. If that's your sentiment like it is mine, then I hope you'll feel some inspiration from watching these two movies. So that's what I want to say here, and thank you for if you have a chance, watch the movies, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you. Bye.